Hey, Deuces Crack fans, this is vandweller, and this is episode 1 of Real Life Micro SNG Grinder, and I am here with Velo Blank, who is also known as John. Say hello to the folks, John.
Hello, folks.
All right. Wow. The So anyway, I'm pretty excited about this series, and the goal of the series is to take John from where he is now, which is not really winning all that much or at all, to being a solid and knowledgeable winning player, and really as a side effect to make interesting and educational viewing. I mean, the real goal here is to get John winning, and that's going to involve things like strategy, obviously, but also things like mindset, bankroll, using the various software that's out there, and so forth. And it's possible that those of you who are watching, you might have a particular problem or issue in sit and goes, and we might not really ever come across it because it's just never like an issue for John. And sorry about that. And it's also possible that there's going to be some things that you already know and it's too elementary for you. And again, the series can't be all things for all people. But as I said, the real important thing here is to coach John, right? And hopefully, if you find it interesting and educational, then that's just a bonus. um, and so the way the series is going to work, it's 8 episodes, obviously, just like every other Deuces Crack series. And we're going to be discussing everything really that is going to go into becoming a winning sit and go player, including stuff about stuff pre-game, like things like as I talked about, like mindset and bankroll and using software, things like that, and really anything else that he sort of needs to know. And then obviously in-game stuff like strategy, tactics, moves, theories, and things like theory and things like that. And post-game, like how to go over your games, looking over hands, how to do that, what you should be looking for. And, throughout the series, we're going to be probably sweating John once or twice. We're going to be looking at some of his hands in the replayer, and really whatever else it takes to get John from where he is now to where we want him to go. And I sort of have like a general outline in mind of what I think the series is going to look like, but that could change depending on uh, on his needs and how he's progressing. And there's sort of a bit of theater or drama in this series because it's more or less real time with how it's being released. I mean, right today is what is today's date? March. I don't even know what today's date is. March 10th, right? Tuesday. So, and this thing is hopefully either going to be put out on March 12th or possibly March 19th. But it's not like I have this series, ready to go, the entire 8 episodes before the season starts. So, it's quite possible that I can't do anything with John, and you all get to watch me fail miserably, which I don't want to happen. But it's possible. So anyway, I hope you enjoy sort of the drama of that. And so, what I kind of want to do next is get to know John or Velo Blank. So, hey, John, again.
Hi.
Hey, so now about how long well, first of all, about you personally, how old are you?
I'm 24.
And you live where?
I live by myself in an apartment.
Well,
I'm
in what geographical location,
I
John?
got you. I'm a little town called Indiana. It's a college town.
Indiana, Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that Western Pennsylvania?
Yes, it is.
Is
It's
it-
probably about a little less than an hour from Pittsburgh.
Now, is it true that in Pittsburgh, bologna is called jumbo? Do you know about that?
I I have not heard that. I
I
don't know about
I
jumbo.
know somebody from Pittsburgh who claims that bologna is called jumbo, which is just strange.
I have never heard of
I've never heard
that.
that. And yeah, and then of course she told me this, and then I've asked like 3 people from near Pittsburgh that since, and they've all said I've never heard of that. So I don't know. And that, but I did look it up on like Wikipedia, and they said it was true. But then again, everyone I asked, they don't know that that's true. So I don't know. I'm still trying to get to the bottom of that great mystery and life. So 24, Western Pennsylvania, and So what? How did you like first like get into poker?
I started poker probably I I heard of poker maybe before college, but it was probably in 2003 when I first started college. And soon after Chris Moneymaker actually won the main event is where I really heard of poker.
Yeah. Did and
Uh,
then so you what happened? Did you like and how and so you were I guess let's see that's 6 years ago,
I would have been 18.
right? So
Um,
fresh face, bushy tail.
right. I
Right.
didn't even know how to play the game. I I remember reading an article to my dad, oh, this guy named Moneymaker won the main event, and I guess start I watched some guys in the dorms usually they were playing,
Yeah.
and I didn't know the first thing about hand rankings, what hand won over another, but was just fascinated by watching $1 tournament games or cash game, whatever they were playing at the time. I thought it was interesting.
So when did you actually like start playing it? Like
Um,
pretty soon after or like
yeah, I played some free rolls maybe. See, when I turned 21, it would have been like 2006 is
right.
when I really started playing like free roll poker. Like in bars, I would just go in and there was no, I didn't have to pay anything, just sat down. But there was like 40 to 50 person fields for two cash payouts, and that's when I really started playing real poker. I knew um, the hand rankings. I played with my friends occasionally, like before I was 21, but I didn't really know how to play poker at the time.
Yeah. Now now you played these like you played online around that time?
Yeah, I remember making a deposit, and I think it was like 2006
Yeah.
on Full Tilt was my first real experience with online poker.
And did you like lose that
I
deposit
did.
or
I remember being really conservative. I was like, what amount will me the most play, but not overextend myself? So I settled on $80
80?
and I ground that one out for a little bit. I remember making probably I was around 120 or 140 and looking at my OPR, I think I bought in for $10 games and just donked them away. It was it was a
Oh, that's
really
a
bad
shame.
time.
Yeah, I remember. I think I deposited like my first deposit. I think was on Party in like 2002, and it was like $50.
Yeah.
And I just sat down like, oh, I've got $50. So I sat down at a game where I had $50 on the table, and I like lost it in 2 minutes.
I loved how it looked like I could win all this money with a $10 buy-in and swipe this tournament, but it didn't happen that way.
Yeah, no, I sat down. I remember when I did it, I sat down at like just 25 cent, 50 cent, no limit, and
Yeah.
and I just like I don't know. I think I was like way ahead of my time because I was like trying to push everyone off of pods. I was just like, what if I
I was
just
too
pretend?
conservative. I was like the opposite.
Really, well, this isn't
And
gonna
then
work then. I think we should just pack the series up. Yeah, like I thought, like, okay, I'm just gonna push everyone up every pot, and I'm just gonna pretend like, what if I pretended I had aces every hand? And
yeah.
so like they would raise and I would just have whatever and I would like re-raise. Like I think I invented like loose three betting, but I'm not gonna, lay claim to that. All right, so you deposited, you lost, and you did you eventually lose that?
Yeah, I looked over my tournament history. I maybe played three sit and goes a month. It was ridiculous how little I'd played poker, but it it wasn't that big of a deal to me. I still like playing live free roll poker more, so I think that's why I didn't play online that much. It was pretty much just for fun at the time.
Right.
I mean, it still is now, but there was no goal to make a bunch of money. It was just I like to play
Yeah.
poker. And I don't know.
Now when did like so obviously, I mean, we're kind of doing this because your intent is to, take it more seriously
Yes,
and to
definitely.
look at it as like a source of income. When did that sort of happen? Like, for example, like you signed up with Deuces Cracked, and when did you start like looking at forums and like really taking it like, I want to know, like what I'm doing, you know?
Right. That's been pretty recent as far as I didn't know what to get out of forums usually when I would go and read them. I knew people were posting hand histories and playing certain hands and asking advice, but I didn't know what I would get out of that really. So I just thought I could help myself by playing my own game and developing like my own poker theory,
Right.
but it hasn't worked, and I think I actually got close free rolling in these tournaments usually. Um, I played for a World Series seat in one of the championships for the like our free roll championship.
Yeah.
It was a 100-person field, and we were just playing for one World Series seat, and
Jesus.
I bubbled the final table,
Oh,
and that's when it really kicked in that I could have a shot at this somehow. I mean,
right.
I got that far on my own, so I just needed a kick in the pants to get me over the hump. So
So you've always like pretty much just like gravitated toward tournament style poker.
yeah, I and the longer the tournament, the better. If it was if it meant grinding it, I was in for it. So I don't
Right.
know what it
Now,
was
how
that
how long have you been a member of Deuces?
probably less than a month, maybe a month
Oh,
now.
really? This
Yes.
is great. You just like sign up, and all of a sudden you're like the star of your own series. It's just
It was surreal. It really was more surreal than some people might think because it really just happened overnight, and this is great. Yeah.
and I know that there's like, and this is, I feel sorry about. I know there's like going to be like 5 to 10 people who are like, well, I've been a member for 2 years and I don't get a
Yeah.
but so I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I mean, you don't suck as bad as Velo does. So I mean, he needs the help more than you do. Um, um, so I mean, on that note, though, I kid when I say you suck, but I mean, let me open up your. Oh, whoops, that wasn't good. Here we go. Let me open up your. I have your Shark Scope
All right.
history up, which everyone can get a look at. Um, so this bottom one is just like unfiltered, just every hand every tournament game that it tracks. But this top one here is your single table history. So 415 games since I don't know whenever it starts, um, and average stake of $2. So you're pretty much now actually you kind of jump around. Actually, I noticed kind of just
Yeah,
even in
def
single tables. Like all right, so we go back to I can only get these for the last 250 games of those 400 something, and that's March '07. $2 game, $2 game. And what was curious to me, all right, you're playing like these low stakes games, maybe sometimes venturing up to $5 and $6, whatever. And all of a sudden we start to say, okay, hey, I'm gonna throw a 10 in there.
Yep.
There's another 10. Okay, these ones aren't working out so well. All right, I'll go up to twos, and then there's an 11, and then all of a sudden there's like these 22. Like, where did those 22s come from?
Yeah.
No, I mean, really, like
That
literally, where
oh
the like
that I
you
don't know
must
what it
remember.
was that just
I mean, that was recently, actually.
yeah, and it wasn't even after like a major win or anything, I don't think, because that's where it usually hits me. I'm like, oh, free money. I'll just jump into a bigger tournament, see if I can roll it over into an even bigger win. But that may have been around. I don't know if it keeps track of the multi-table. Is this the multi-table
Oh,
screen?
these are singles, man. These are
Okay, because I won. It was this year in February, I think. I got second place in the Ferguson on Full Tilt. It was just a $1 game,
right. Oh
and
yeah,
and made that into 130. So that was probably around that time where I was like, oh, let's just throw some money at a game, and
that's pretty sweet. 130 for how long did that take you? Like, does that thing last
oh,
like
it
hours
took
and hours?
me. I had class that morning. I think I lost at 7:30 in the morning, I think, from 1:30, so 6 to 7 hours.
Did you even go to? I see. I wouldn't even go to class. I'd be like so pumped, like
Yeah.
$130.
No, no,
Like
I was pumped, but I had to make it there, and it made my day to say that I did that for that long, and I
right.
had my aces cracked five-handed. That's what I remember.
I mean, you always remember like your bust out hands. So
Yeah.
you're not? Are you still in school or?
Yes, I am. I'm in nursing school right now. Just still have to get my bachelor's, but
Yeah. God, there's a lot of money in that, isn't there?
yep. Yeah.
Oh, you're gonna bank, dude. Plus you're gonna, I mean, I don't know, you're gonna get to work with women all the time.
Yeah,
I mean, that's like the best part.
it is.
So you still have a ways to go in school, and do you have a, like, obviously you have some sort of other employment, and what do you do?
Yes. I work at a golf course right now and do odd jobs during the summer. Painting, landscaping. Some of it's cash,
Yeah,
it's just straight up payroll, but uh, that's
under the table is the way to go. I mean, just for anybody listening, by the
it
way,
is.
anything they can't track is the best. Well, they can't get their hands on it. Um, and all right, so what was the other thing? Oh, and velo, right? That velo
Yes,
refers to bicycling. So do you have do a lot of bicycling?
yes, a lot. That I started cycling probably around the same time, 2003. So that's probably what I probably didn't play poker as much because of cycling. I was interested in racing and got into some triathlons
Jeez.
and
So you're like pretty fit, Jeez.
yeah,
I
as skinny if that's fit.
I used to do a lot of like loaded touring, where you just like you take your bike and you put like
Yeah,
the panniers on it and you throw like 80 pounds worth of gear on it and go camping,
yeah.
whatever. Like
That's something I still haven't done yet is cross country or loaded touring.
yeah,
It's
that was hard, and I'm believe me, I am in no shape to do it now. Like I am, it's really sad. I just worked out for the first time like yesterday in like almost a year, and I'm just like I just like walked like 3 steps and I'm totally winded. So anyway, I'm sure everyone is fascinated about my personal exercise history. So anyway, just bring it back to poker. So you're taking it more seriously now. You're really looking at it as a source of like just kind of like a like secondary income. Like how many hours a week you think you're like want to like commit to poker?
I was thinking about how much I actually play now,
Yeah.
and I think I do play a fair amount. I can't, I'll say like a couple hours a day maybe, so average of 10 to 12 a week maybe.
Well, that's pretty
That,
good for someone who's otherwise like employed and has school and everything
yeah.
like that. What else do you do? I mean, you just work and play poker. Like
Yeah,
that's what I do,
that's
except
about
for like work and
jujitsu right now. I started doing jujitsu, so
really.
uh, grappling, yeah.
Wow.
It's it's uh it's not really a workout as far as I don't feel tired after it, but
Yeah.
you get gassed. There's some kind of something about it that makes you feel like you actually went through a workout, but
Well,
without being tired.
that sounds pretty cool. And so now, like, how many tables are you playing at a time?
I rarely multi-table. I The most I might have done is three at a time.
Right? How was that?
I thought it was difficult. I actually tried it the other night and just popped up some turbo games, and it, I thought it was awful. I couldn't, I don't use any software at all, so
Right.
I play my cards straight up, and if something's odd the way a raise is put in, then I'll dump it, but
Right.
it's just, it's rarely multi-table.
Yeah. And so three tables really gets you.
Yeah, I I can do two easily. Three to four is like my cutoff.
Right.
I can't run those.
Well, we're gonna get you up to like 8 to 10, something
All
like
right.
that. Um, so anyway, so all right, you're putting in 10, 12 hours a week, and you're playing 1 to 2 tables at a time, and so forth. And you know, the 10 to 12 hours a week is good. The 1 to 2 tables at a time is not really going to get you there, even if you're winning. So I mean, that is something that we're going to have to work on in terms of uh, getting getting your volume up. Because really, when it comes right down to it, winning at sit and goes is all about volume, right?
Yeah.
Because look at you. I mean, even if you're right now, you're playing like $2 games with occasional venture up to the fives or whatever. Even if you're playing the 10 or 20 games, all right, you play a $20 game, and if you win what, $90, right? But
Yeah.
of course, you're not going to win all the time. So like, you can't just one table and then have like a 1 in 9 or 1 in 8 shot at $90 and expect to
Right.
really make any money. So, you're really going to have to. We're going to have to get your tables up. And really that's going to come from simplifying your decision making. I don't want to get ahead of us, but I've seen like some of your hand histories, and there's really a lot going on that really shouldn't. And so the
Hmm.
more decisions you're actually forcing yourself to make, the more times you actually have to press the button, you know. And
Hmm.
so the few, the the less time you have to make decisions that you could be making on other tables. So that being said, what we're really trying to do is turn you uh, into a grinder, right? Upping your number of tables, getting you to put in volume. And so I really wanted to get into in this episode, and those of you who are watching, I don't want you to be disappointed that there's no actual like hand content and analysis and stuff like that. But I wanted to discuss, some of the things that I sort of wish that when I was in John's shoes, sort of as a beginner, just kind of taking it seriously, I wish I had been told all this stuff because it would have made, the going a little bit more smooth. So there's some kind of stuff that I just sort of want to get over with in terms of, mentality, um, uh, how how you should approach sit and goes when you're trying to sort of approach them as a career, even if it's only 10 to 12 hour a week career. And so when I think about like, well, what is a grinder, right? I mean, because I call this series real life micro sit and go grinder, yeah, and everybody knows that there were the previous series on Deuces Cracked covering limit hold'em and no limit hold'em cash games. And they, who I think Entity had the first series called that, and I very well could have called, this series something else. I could have called it Zero to Hero or whatever. But I kind of wanted. I mean, I like the idea of the grinder in it, right? Because it's really, to me, like how the people who are really making money in poker are making their money, right? And we all get this sort of vision in our heads, or the guy at the final table who's, holding up a couple of bricks of cash and whatever, and obviously he made money, but the vast majority of people who are making money in poker are doing it because they're grinding away, right? They're not just getting one big score and then getting their going on a promotional tour and and releasing a video game or whatever. So when I think about what a grinder is, I think, well, really when I think about what any concept means, the first question I always ask is, well, as opposed to what? Like, what is a grinder? But like, when I'm trying to think about what that is, as opposed to what? What's the alternative to being a grinder? Well, that's being a casual player, right? Casual player is someone who just plays whenever they feel like it, right? It's Tuesday and they're kind of want to unwind. They sit down and, oh, poker, okay, I'll play, and they don't really have any kind of overarching kind of goals of any substance. They might think, oh, I'd like to win some money, but they don't really think like, okay, really love to supplement my income. Let's set up a plan, blah, blah, blah. They don't really think like that. They just play because it's fun, right? So a grinder isn't that, right? A grinder is somebody, what, who plays because he wants to make money. And this is, where John is kind of making his transition into this. He wants to make money, and he's committed to putting the time into it. I mean, he's committing to these 8 episodes of this series and the coaching that's going to happen outside, of even the recording of the series. Um, and obviously he wants to put in 10 to 12 hours a week of playtime and so forth. So, I mean, he's already making that transition into like, okay, I don't want to just like sit down and play. I want to like put in a focused amount of time and like get the most out of that time that I possibly can. And to me, that's what a grinder is. And in addition, it's someone that takes a professional attitude towards it, right? And so and I think that word professional is pretty key, right? Now, obviously, most of the people who are watching the series, and John isn't necessarily going to like make sit and goes like a career, like I'm like 40 hours a week and this is all I do and then, whatever. But I would say that even a casual player, who, like a part-time player, I guess is what I want to say, who, doesn't have a lot of time to commit to poker, can still benefit from taking a professional attitude toward it. And, even if you're just kind of amateur or, casual and recreational, it's still more fun to be like really good at something than not. So I think that even if you don't intend to like go pro, there's still a lot that can be taken from the idea of a professional. And so I kind of wanted to break down what a professional is. I mean, what does it mean? A professional as opposed to someone who's just kind of, you know, lackadaisical and just kind of, uh, just approaches something casually. For one thing, a professional sets goals, right? I mean, when you think about it in any career, right, like a stockbroker or whatever, he's got an idea of what he wants to do with his, with his career and of course his life overall, right? And he sets a plan to achieve those goals, and then he goes about and executes the plan, right? As opposed to what? As opposed to just like, well, if I do well in poker, whatever, I'm not going to sweat it. I mean, that's not a professional, right? A professional constantly monitors his performance, right? According to standards that are realistic and relevant, right? As opposed to the casual player who's just like, well, I think I'm doing all right. I don't know, you know. Um, so, you know, I mean, that's something we're going to want to, look into is how to do that. Uh, a professional manages his resources properly. Like a professional, it doesn't have to be a stockbroker. It could be a plumber, right? I mean, he's got an inventory of like things like pipes and blah blah blah, and he makes sure to get the most out of that he possibly can. It doesn't have too much in his warehouse, and but doesn't have too little, right? So a professional also understands the nature of the business he's in and doesn't get emotionally derailed by the ups and downs inherent in it, right? Like think about somebody like a shop owner, right? Retail is cyclical. I mean, it does really well in one part of the year, like like the holiday season, that sort of Black Friday until like the first of the year. But then it kind of tails off, and like the summer, retail usually goes down, and so forth. And so if you're a shop owner and you don't understand that that happens, and you let yourself get like all pissed off about, oh man, or or wistful, or you're like, oh boy, if only I would do as well in the summer as I did in the holidays. Well, you can't. I mean, that's just not the nature of the business, right? So same thing in poker, right? You have to sort of understand the nature of poker, and the fact that there's going to be ups and downs, and that's just an inherent part of the game. Um, and this one might be controversial, but I think it's true. A professional goes to work even if he doesn't feel like it that day, right? If you had some guy who worked for you, right, and he just kind of showed up whenever he wanted to, and blew off customers because he just didn't feel like it. He'd rather do something else. Well, you wouldn't think that guy was very professional. And I think similarly in poker, the guys who really are making money are guys who even though they might not kind of wake up not feeling like playing poker that day, they get themselves into like whatever it takes for them to have to play that day. Uh, I think that those are the guys who are really making the money, is guys who put in the time consistently despite how they are feeling themselves. And as I said, I think that's true in any profession. People who just show up, that's a big part of it. A professional also uses the right tools for the job, right? I mean, if your plumber showed up with like a screwdriver and tried to then obviously he was trying to get a nut off the thing. Now, I mean, it's like if you think about like if you're a person at home, you probably have some tools at your house, and but there's a lot of tools you don't have. And if you ever have something break in your house and you're trying to like fix it with a hammer, even though the hammer isn't the best tool, but you're not a professional, so why would you have the actual right tool you would have? And you're just kind of, you're screwing around, and you're not really doing it right. Well, you're not a professional, but a professional, if you called him in, he would have the right tool, and it would be done in like 2 seconds, right? But whereas it takes you an hour because you only have a hammer. So to me, a professional has the right tools and knows how to use them. A professional also stays up to date with his field, like with what's going on in the field, in his field of endeavor, right? He knows like new techniques, he knows new theory, he knows all that kind of stuff. Like I don't know. I mean, pick anything, like a professional bike racer, whatever. He knows like the new equipment that's coming out. He knows, he keeps up to date with things about like kinesiology and supplementation and things like that. And a person who didn't do that, you wouldn't really think he's giving his all, right? So So similarly in poker, I mean, a guy who's a professional stays up to date with everything that's going on in his field, including like gossip, um, and uh, and probably most importantly, a professional is honest about what he knows and doesn't know, and he's continually trying to refine his understanding of his chosen field, right? And we're going to have a little bit more to say about that too. But really, you know, we've all encountered sort of the salesman, right, who doesn't really know much about his product, and he's trying to sell it to us anyway. He makes stuff up. He's maybe a little bit too proud to admit that he doesn't know anything, and that really is, not the hallmark of a really solid professional. So I think those are some attributes. Now, I'm not saying that these are like an exhaustive list, but I think those sort of capture the essence of it, and I think those are all true about what a professional is. So we have that, sort of, I don't know how many items that was, like 9 items or something like that. And I sort of want to take a look actually at each of those. You may be thinking, okay, well, you just went over them. Why do we really have to pour over them? I think there's a lot sort of to know about these things, and and I think it's important to sort of understand like more in depth, like how to go about your sit and go career, like as a professional. So I kind of want to take a look at each one of these aspects. Just in brief. I mean, I know we're at the half-hour mark, and uh, and I've still got a long way to go, but I think it is important to sort of understand this stuff. And the one thing that I mentioned was goal setting. And goal setting in any endeavor is going to keep you motivated and focused, right? You're going to have an end in view. When it's kind of, boy, I don't feel like playing today. If you can sort of summon that image of, okay, well, what are my goals? All right. And maybe that might seem kind of motivating to you. So it's going to keep you motivated and on task. And effective goals have a few attributes. One is they're specific, they're measurable, they're flexible, and they're realistic. And to the extent that your goals are vague or unrealistic, they're just like dreams, or fantasies, or things you think about when you're kind of lying in bed and just like, oh, wouldn't it be nice to whatever. Like for example, like I want to be the best sit and go player in the world. That is not a goal. There's no way to measure that, right? I mean, how would you measure that? I don't even know. Would you challenge everybody to? I mean, I don't even know what you do. But I want to be on top of the leaderboard for my buy-in this month. That's measurable, right? You can, okay, because you can see I'm at the top of the leaderboard this month or not, right? So there's actually feedback that's meaningful. Similarly, I want to win the World Series of Poker is not a realistic goal, right? That is not a valid goal because there are thousands of entrants, and there's only one World Series of Poker every year. Although, if you want to throw in that Europe one, there are two. And a human lifespan is only 80 years, so that doesn't really take into account, the probabilities, right? Of like, you can't really set. Now, I'm going to win the World Series of Poker. What's it going to take? And then do a series of steps that leads inexorably to the winning of the World Series of Poker. There's probability and there's luck involved. But you could set a goal. I want to earn enough money to play in the World Series of Poker, and when I get there, I want to play as well as I can. Now that's a realistic goal. And there are people that think, oh, if only I could win the World Series of Poker, you know, and they're never even going to have a shot because they don't actually translate that into something that's realistic that they can actually set sub goals to and achieve them. And it is okay. I mean, I don't want to say that it's not okay to fantasize about these things like being the best sit go player in the world or winning a World Series, because it can often provide you with motivation. When you're kind of in those places where you're like, oh, I'm not feeling really great about poker right now, you might sit back and just sort of visualize or fantasize about the things you really want to get out of poker. But if you really want to go ahead and achieve things like that, you do have to translate those into realistic, measurable milestones or goals, along with like a series of sub goals that are required to achieve them, right? So that once you've actually formulated those goals, what you need to do is formulate an action plan, which is really just a series of sub goals, things that you can attain, sort of minor steps, which are goals themselves, which all lead up sort of to the attainment of the like overarching goal. So for sit and goes, for example, how would this apply to sit and goes? You might set a goal to make a certain amount of money per month. Like I want to make $1,000 a month. I mean, that's slightly unrealistic, not because $1,000 is unattainable. Obviously, there are people making $1,000 a month. It's unrealistic because your results aren't really in your immediate control. I mean, sit and goes are. I mean, you can play well and just have a crappy month and not win anything, or you might even win more than 1,000. But so what you want to do is translate a goal like that into an achievable sub goal about your volume, right? So you might say, I want to make $1,000 and I want to play at the $11 level, right? Now, on average, like say you had a 10% ROI, this, you could do the little math, and I'm not going to do it here, but you could translate that goal into an amount of games that you need to play. And so that's the kind of goal that's within your control. Like the amount of money you make isn't, right? It's just your volume, what you expect to win, and then you'd go ahead and give it your best shot at putting it in. But that's how you sort of, if you have these sort of monetary goals, you sort of have to break it down into a goal about volume. And your goals also have to take into account your own abilities and limitations, as well as the limitations set by the world and your particular circumstances. I mean, if it's very possible that, a person might want to really win a lot of money at poker or at sit and goes, and they're just not that great a player just inherently, and they like never will be. And that, they're just some people that don't have that mindset. And so for them to make, goals about that is pretty unrealistic. They're not taking into account, sort of their own capacities. And also, limitations set by the world, or your particular life circumstances. John, you work however many hours a week, you go to school. It probably wouldn't be realistic for you to set a goal like, well, I want to put in 2,000 games this month, right? So I mean,
Right.
you have to sort of take into account, limitations by the world and just, kind of ratchet down your expectations of what's possible given your circumstances. I know I'm like not letting you talk, but I mean,
Oh, that's okay.
is this
I'm
okay? Is this
track.
all like is this interesting at all to you? I hope so.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Good. I hope so. Well, I'm glad of course you have to say that. If you said no, then we're totally screwed. So I
We end it right
appreciate
now.
playing along. Um, okay, so that's just a bit about goal setting. Now, goal setting is a huge topic, and there's really a lot to say, and it's really it's really an important thing if you ever want to achieve anything like in life. Um, and I've covered in like two like PowerPoint frames what could take up like an encyclopedia. So I mean, there are books on that, and if in the thread for this this video, if you're interested in some of my recommendations about books on any of these topics, that aren't poker books, you can ask me, and I'll go ahead and list some of them. So I want to move on to, oh shoot, I didn't do my special little thing where it, oh man, that stinks. Oh wait, no, I did. Oh, okay. Forget that you saw that slide before. So performance evaluation. As I said before, a professional is somebody who knows how to evaluate how they're doing, right? And for sit and goes, the ultimate performance metric is return on investment, and that's really just your net profit divided by how much money total you bought in times 100, and that gives you a percentage, like 10% ROI, whatever. And ultimately, your ROI, if you're one of the best players at your level, is going to top out somewhere between 5% at like the highest levels and 20% at the lowest, like 20% at like the ones and twos, is attainable, I think, still today. And if you get up to 5% when you're at the highest levels, like, past the $100 level, then you're actually doing pretty well. And obviously there's a continuum between those two numbers through the various buy-ins. But the profitability of sit and goes is like constantly changing, right? Like maybe 4 years ago, you could attain, 10, 12, 15% at the highest levels was possible. But it's really just with, all the information that's out there and players getting better and so forth, it's not really the same today. And so that's constantly changing. So the best thing to do if whenever you're watching this video, maybe it's 2 years from now, I mean, just to know what's possible or what's realistic is to go to the sticky in the sit and go forum on 2+2. And I think they're saying, maybe 18% at the high, at the low levels. And I think maybe 4% at the, I don't know what they're saying, but it's somewhere within that range. I don't know. So it hasn't been updated in a year or so, but it's still, I think, pretty valid. Now, the thing to note about your ROI is that it's always in a state of flux, right? Maybe long term it's not, but in the short term, it's always in a state of flux, and it's completely outside your immediate control. You can be doing everything right, and over your last 500 games, you're just break even, you're negative, and you can't monitor really how am I doing, right? You can't say like how am I performing? Am I doing well? You can't look at your ROI in the short term and know that. It's not reliable because there's just a disconnect in the short term between what you're doing and how you're doing, unfortunately, right? So it's really not a useful thing to look at to evaluate your own performance. So what I really recommend is monitoring how you're doing in terms of like your sub goals, right? Like we talked about before, and your overall confidence and understanding, right, of sit and goes. I think it's the best thing you can do in the short term. So if you're truly doing everything correct, and you're losing anyway in the short term, you're winning. I mean that there's nothing else you can do, and you can't beat yourself up about 500,000 game losing samples if you know you're otherwise doing the right thing. And I think in that Tommy Angelo podcast that we just had on Deuces Cracked, he talks about like redefining what it means to win. Did you listen to that, John? You should listen to that.
I did not. I saw the link for it though. I think it was on one of the threads, your threads or something that I remember seeing that. I didn't listen to it.
Yeah, you should listen to it like immediately.
All right.
I mean, it's really one of the best things you can ever listen to. Um, and he talks about like redefining what it means to win. And when we think of like, I'm winning, obviously the most obvious thing our mind goes to is, okay, you're winning money. But again, in poker, there's a disconnect between what we're doing and how we're doing in the short term. You can't say, well, okay, winning means winning money. You have to say winning means doing all the things that are required to make money. And if I'm doing those things, even if I'm not winning money, I'm still winning at poker. And so some of these things to account for are, well, like, all right, are you playing the correct number of tables, like a comfortable number of tables for you, right? If you're not, then you're not winning, right? I mean, you're doing something wrong. Are you honestly confident in your in-game decision making? If you sit back and look at over the last 2 weeks or whatever, how you've been playing, you have to ask yourself, have I really been making the decisions? Have I been confident in the decisions I've made? Or have I been kind of wishy-washy and just kind of shoving all in and, just kind of hoping it's the right thing to do? I mean, do I know what I'm doing and why, right? And if you're not, are you doing what it takes to become more knowledgeable and more confident in your decision making? I mean, are you posting hands on the internet? Are you pulling up your hand histories in Sit and Go Wizard and whatever, and looking over them to try to see what you're doing wrong? Are you looking into getting coaching? Are you reading books? Are you talking to friends? Whatever. I mean that's something. If you're not doing that, then you're performing poorly, right? If you're doing that, if you're doing all these things, you're still winning. Are you prone to tilt? Have you been doing that? All right. So it's not, oh, are you playing too tired? Are you too drunk? Are you not drunk enough? Some people play better when they're high. I mean, well, it's possible. I don't really advocate that, but some people realistically, when you look at it, they really do better. So, these are the things that you want to evaluate yourself on performance-wise, not your short-term results, because you're just going to, as I said, and I said it like twice already, but there's a disconnect between what you're doing and how you're doing. And you always have to remember that. So when you're trying to think like, oh man, I had a sucky month at poker, you didn't. If you did all these things and more, are there any more of these? Yeah, there's one. Yeah, here. Do you have realistic expectations of what's possible at your particular site and stakes? I mean, that's another one. If you do, you're winning. If you do all these things, and I don't know if this is an exhaustive list again, but this sort of indicates the kind of questions you should be asking yourself when you're running poorly or when you're running well or whatever. And if you were doing those things, you're winning, period. So the other thing we talked about, resource management, is something that a professional is good at. And our resources in a sit and go, or when we're playing sit and goes, is our bankroll. And there is a lot of, if you Google bankroll advice or whatever, sit and go bankroll on the internet, you're going to find a lot of links from like 2005. And it's all totally irrelevant to the way today's games are because bankroll is largely a function of your win rate, and win rates that were possible in like 2004, 2005, so forth, are just not the same today. So if you are trying to find out bankroll advice and you Google it and you go to these pages, like these random pages from like these poker forums you never heard of, just totally don't listen to it. In fact, I would say don't listen to any bankroll advice that's more than a year old, because the game changes that much. So the most important factors, though, I mean, if we're trying to get a sense of like what our bankroll should look like, the most important factors are, I mean, the most dominant factor is your win rate, but also your comfort level, like how much money do you feel comfortable having, and your willingness to move, down in stakes if you run poorly. And so, I mean, obviously, the higher your win rate, the more psychologically indifferent you are to like what your actual bankroll is, and the more willing you are to move down, the less of a bankroll you actually need, which I hope should be obvious. And I would say, what did I say? It's March. What's today's date? It's March 10th, 2009. So, if you're watching this 2 years from now, just know that these numbers from that. And I would say at this time, actually, well, this isn't even at this time. These numbers I think are good for all dates and times because I'm not recommending them for like a particular stake. You'll see this list of, well, if you're playing $5 sit and goes, you want to have 20 buy-ins. If you're playing $10 sit and goes, you'll need 30. It's really a function most often of your win rate. And if you go by these numbers, like, so the yellow numbers here are what what an ROI is. So if you think your ROI is 10%, then 60 buy-ins is pretty good. Now what level you're going to have a 10% ROI? Probably up through like the 20s and 30s. You could probably get away with having like 60 buy-ins. If you're playing, if you end up playing higher than that, I mean, you're really going to want to have a lot of buy-ins, like 90 to 125. But if you're playing at the micro stakes where these ROIs are possible, particularly the 20 and 16, I mean, you're not going to really attain that much higher than the $5 level. Then, you can get away at the micro stakes with 30 or 40 buy-ins just because, your win rate is so high. I mean, you're constantly cashing, your bankroll's constantly climbing, and so, the downswings just aren't going to happen when you have those high ROIs. As they are when you have these low ROIs. I mean, the lower your ROI, the more swingy you're going to be, right? Because the less of an overall edge you have, and really everything else being equal, the lower your edge in a game, the more swingy it's going to be. So, if you think your long-term ROI is like somewhere in this range, then you're going to want a pretty fairly healthy number of buy-ins for your level. Now, if you don't know your win rate, I mean, that's very possible if you're just starting out and you think you're a winning player, but you don't really have a large sample. And I would say, again, just sort of like the previous thing, like keep current with the guidelines in this sticky of the 2+2 forum, because that's going to be updated, every year or so, and it's going to account for, what's possible at any given level and so forth. And I think right now, what AMT is the author of that sticky, so I think like he's recommending you should have like 100 buy-ins and maybe 200, and maybe he's somewhat of a nit, but I think there's sort of a value to being over bankrolled. If you're playing like $10 sit and goes, and you have like $2,000 in your account, and you play a set of 8, so you've got 200 buy-ins for that level. You play a set of 8 and you totally whiff, and you lose $80. What's $80 out of 2,000? Just psychologically, it doesn't really affect you as much as if you had like 50 buy-ins, so that would be what, 50, that would be $500. All of a sudden you lose like $80 of that, and you're like down to 420, and then you can just like picture, oh my God, if that happens like 3 or 4 more times, I'm dead, So if you want to be overrolled, a lot of people really think that's a good idea, and I tend to agree, especially if it's going to affect you psychologically. It's always better to have too many than not enough. And so people always ask me, not always, but people often ask me about like cashing out. Like when can I cash out? And I would say if you're just starting out and you're looking to build your bankroll, don't cash it out. If you're at a point where you're just sort of feel that you're in training and you're trying to build up so that you can eventually play stakes that will generate an amount of money that like actually makes a difference to your life, then don't cash out until you get to that level, right? if you eventually see yourself playing like $20 sit and goes, and you want to get there as soon as possible, and you think you can win at them, then don't cash out unless you have a calamity or something befall you. But once you start wanting to cash out, once you get to the level where, okay, I can see myself at this level for a while, I have a decent win rate, I seem to be adding to my bankroll by a good amount, I would cash out according to how many games you play and not according to how much you won. So this lets you sort of cash out regardless of your results. And what I would do is I would cash out a certain percentage of a buy-in for each game that I played. And my guidelines are this. I mean, you can see them here. I don't know. Should I say them? I guess maybe there's some blind poker players that are listening. But from 0 to 650, if you're playing those buy-ins, I would cash out 5% of a game every time like I played. So if I played, say, 500 games that month, I would cash out 5% of whatever my buy-in was. So if I was playing like $5 sit and goes, just to make it easy, 5% of $5 is what? Well, 10% is 50 cents, so 25 cents. For every single one that I played, I would cash out 25 cents. If you're, let's say one, that should say 11, by the way, in this slide. I don't know why it says one. That should say 11. So from the $11 to $36 level, I would cash out 4% of a buy-in for everyone I played, and for $50 through like the 119s. Now I used full tilt numbers. Obviously, if you play on stars, you can sort of adjust it for how the stars games run. But from 50 to 119, I would cash out 3% of a buy-in. And if you're playing higher than that, then I would cash out half of your long-term ROI. So, if you're, I mean, at the very highest stakes, you might only be expected to win like 3 to 5%. So if you're a 3% winner, a lot of your winnings are going to come from like rake back and bonuses and things like that. If you're playing at the higher stakes and your ROI is 3% and you're pretty confident in that, then I would cash out 1.5% of a buy-in for every game you play. And additionally, I would cash out anytime I made rake back or any bonuses or anything like that, I would cash that out too. So what is the value of doing it this way, right? Well, for one thing, it keeps you motivated to play volume, right? I mean, you know that you're gonna get paid no matter what, right? If you put in the volume this month, and assuming you're properly bankrolled and everything, you are going to get paid even when you lose. And so, there's something comforting to a lot of people to know, like, okay, if I put in my 500 games at the $20 level, I know I can make $500, and whatever rake back I made. So there's something comforting to know that you can cash out no matter what happens to you. The other thing is it's also going to keep you playing at buy-ins that you have a healthy ROI at. Because think about it, if you are playing at a certain level and all of a sudden you have to cash out, but that's knocking you down to having to play another buy-in that's lower, that means you are not beating the game as well as, like, say 5% here, right? Presumably your ROI is going to be more than 5%, right? So that means, say your ROI is 10%, right? At the 650s, that means for every buy-in you put in, you're winning, 10% of a buy-in, and are cashing out, we're going to be cashing out 5% of a buy-in. So you're actually leaving 5% of that buy-in in your bankroll, right? But now imagine that you're only winning at 3%. That means this system has you cashing out 5%. That means it has you cashing out more than you're winning. But that's not necessarily a bad thing because you're only beating this level for 3%. So maybe you should go back down, right? So that's sort of what this kind of system does, right? And the other thing that's good about this is that not only does it allow you to cash out, but it also lets your bankroll grow, which is important for moving up and for withstanding variance. I mean, the higher your bankroll, the more variance you can withstand, right? I mean, if you start off with 100 buy-ins, I mean, there is a non-zero chance that you're going to have a 50 to 60 buy-in downswing. But, I mean, it's a small chance, but it's a non-zero chance. But if you let your bankroll continually grow, all of a sudden you're up to 180 buy-ins for your level, and, you're kind of thinking about moving up. All of a sudden, if that 50 to 60 buy-in downswing hits you, all right, you're not going to be happy about it, but at least you're going to have, still a healthy bankroll left. So it's important to grow your bankroll for that reason, and so that you can eventually move up if you choose to. So anyway, that's sort of my cashing out strategy. I think this is better than just cashing out whenever you make money. And there are people like that cash out like whatever they win, right? So they'll start with 50 buy-ins at a level, and they'll win, and all of a sudden they've got 100 buy-ins for the level, so they cash out the 50 that they won, and they leave themselves with 50 again. Well, that is really unsustainable, because that downswing, if you keep doing that, it's coming. I can guarantee you it's going to happen sometime in your poker career, assuming you hit enough volume. But if you continually leave yourself with only 50 buy-ins, you're going to get wiped out. If you're not willing to move down. If you're willing to move down, then it's a little bit better. But if you're not really willing to move down, and some people aren't, that can totally wipe you out. So anyway, I think it's a good system, and it's better than just cashing out. For you, John, I wouldn't recommend you really cash out right now, unless you really have
Right.
to. I mean, we want to get you to the point where you're playing at a level that's going to make money that's sort of non-trivial for you.
Hmm.
I mean, if you won $2 sit and go for $9, you'd be like, yay, but it's not going to like, oh boy, I'm going to go get
Milk for the week.
yeah, whatever. I'm going to go shop at Whole Foods now instead of whatever stupid site stupid grocery store I'm shopping at.
Yeah.
I'm going to buy all organic now. Yay. So anyway, I mentioned variance. That, having a larger bankroll helps you manage variance. And so I want to say a little bit about variance, but I don't want to say anything really mathy about it, because for one thing, I don't know all the advanced math of variance. But what I do know is that variance really is the difference between your expected result and your actual result, right? As I said, there's always a disconnect between what you do and how you do it, what you're doing and how you're doing, and that's variance, right? And so, or more simply, variance is just how swingy your results are. And among players, I would say this, because I've coached a lot of players, and among those who are struggling with sit and goes, but not from a strategy perspective and not from like how they're playing, the inability to psychologically cope with variance is like overwhelmingly, I didn't put that's an adverb, sorry about that, is overwhelmingly the number one issue that they're struggling with. And it's really hard, because some people have downswing and they just don't want to play. Oh, I'm losing. Why should I play? I'm done, right? And you can't do that. If you're going to be this kind of professional, this grinder kind of guy, you have to play. I mean, there's no alternative. So you really have to, understand, or at least be able to psychologically deal with it. And I would say this, you really want to develop like a Zen-like indifference to variance, where you can be up or down and it just doesn't matter to you, And this really starts with understanding and accepting that variance, it's, you can't escape it, and it's like an inherent feature of the game, right? I mean, there's no way to escape it. It isn't good, it isn't bad, it just is, right? So it's just like this Zen-like, you can watch your graph, and as long as you're doing everything well, you don't care what the graph looks like. That's important. And so now, kind of people think about variance in a way that, lends themselves to hate it, right? Lend themselves to hating it. They think variance is what happens when we're on a downswing, right? I mean, that's, if you ask somebody, you say, variance, and they'll be like, oh yeah, variance sucks. Because they think of it as like variance means you're down, right? But variance is not just a feature of like when you're on a downswing. Variance is, and it's not just your results in, over time. It's really an inherent feature of every single hand. Every single hand you play features variance, and that means whether you win it, variance to you, whether you win it or lose it. For example, let's say we're playing a cash game, whatever, you get all in with aces against kings in $100 pot, right? And your aces hold up, right? You're happy, but that's variance. You're expected to only win $82 from that pot, and yet you won 100. So that means you got lucky. But we're not really trained to think about that being us being lucky, right? We don't think that we won more than we should have. We think, oh, I have aces versus kings and I won. That's what's supposed to happen, right? We don't think about that. But that's true. I mean, you won more than your expectation, and that's variance. It's the difference between your expectation and what actually happened. So you have to really realize that variance goes both ways. And you simply can't fight it, right? getting upset, or you get in a bad mood, or you start, oh, if only my ace king held up on the bubble, whatever. It's just a waste of mental energy because it's totally inescapable, and you're just better off like stopping thinking about that. I mean, you should maybe study some more, play some more if you can do it, or you're better off just staring at a wall. I mean, you just there's no point. I mean, okay, I was a philosophy major, so I always have to throw in like Aristotle or Plato, or whatever. Aristotle is quoted, and of course he never actually said this, but they attribute it to him. We are what we repeatedly do, right? And if you allow yourself to whine and worry about something like that you can do nothing about, you just become a whiner and a worrier. And sit and go stay the same. Variance is going to happen whether you worry about it, whether you complain about it, whether you type in the chat box like, oh, the fourth time today, aces lose to ace king. It's going to happen no matter what you do. So why do that? I mean, complaining about variance is productive as complaining about gravity or about, any inexorable feature of the universe. I mean, it's ridiculous to do it. I mean, it doesn't help you at all. So if you just go into this whole endeavor, right? I'm going to put in a lot of volume at sit and goes. If you just go into that, just thinking, knowing and just accepting, right? Just accept it that your results are always going to differ, that your actual results are always going to differ from your expected results. You're going to be a lot further ahead of the game, right? If you just know it, right? And you just don't fight it. And really, more than accepting it, embrace variance. Because it's variance that gives the fish, the people who are donating to our games, that's what gives them the illusion that they can win, if only they catch the right flops, or if only, whatever I don't know what they're thinking. But but whatever they're thinking, it's the fact that, maybe like 2 months ago, they had this incredible run up where they got 4 firsts in a row, right? And their mind goes back to that. And that's what they hearken to when they keep doing their stupid moves. And, they keep trying to win that way. And that's what keeps them donating. So it's variance that helps you. And of course, your edge comes from knowing, for one thing, understanding variance, but knowing how to win as opposed to them, and for being like psychologically and financially through bankroll prepared for the inherent swings of it. So I don't know. That's something that I really think that if I had known that very early in my career, I would have been a lot further ahead of the game, because believe me, I struggled with this for so long that it wasn't that, I got mad or upset or like started throwing keyboards, but it's that I got really moody and I did not want to play. So I would go through like a bad swing I'm not going to say a bad swing because that's assigning like a value to it. I went through a downswing and I wouldn't play for like weeks because I was just so upset. Like, oh, if only poker could just be like a regular paycheck where you could cash out the same amount every month and win this. But actually, in a way, my cash out strategy sort of helps you kind of get through this because you can cash out no matter what your results. So anyway, that's my bit on variance, and that really would have helped me if I had known that or understood all that when I was starting out. So the other thing that I mentioned about being a professional is that a professional shows up to work even when he doesn't feel like it, right? Now, everybody gets sick and doesn't, and can't, work. I mean, that happens. But to be a grinder is really to commit to a schedule or a volume goal, and in the overwhelming majority of cases, to stick to that schedule or amount of volume. And now poker differs in this way from a lot of other jobs, because very often if you don't feel like playing, but you play anyway, you're not going to be playing your A game, right? And you can lose a lot of money. Whereas if like, well, I guess it's true in other fields too. If you're a dentist and you don't feel like going to work, I guess, some sort of a disaster could ensue. But, but there are a lot of jobs where you can just kind of, whatever. You're a telemarketer or, you're going to a call center. You don't feel like going to work because you probably never feel like going to work in that kind of job. But, you go anyway and you just kind of get through it and, whatever. And you can sort of just, get yourself to that thing where you sound pleasant on the phone and, you can get through the day and then you go home and, and then you'd like drink all night. So, so even though if we try to play poker when we don't feel like it, we're going to be playing poorly, we still have to, be committed to trying to get that volume in, even despite our mood, right? Because, I mean, That's really the key to making money at this game, is to put in the volume. So you've got to put in the volume. And if every time you didn't feel like playing poker, you didn't play, uh, you wouldn't be paying the bills. So I mean, there are some things we can sort of do to try to get in the mood to play. And this isn't really all that substantive, but I mean, just stuff I sort of thought of. But first and foremost, try to identify and try to reason with the source of you're not feeling like it. You don't feel like it. So ask yourself, well, why don't I feel like it, right? And, if you even just ask that question, I don't feel like playing. Why is that? Sometimes an answer will pop up in your head and say, well, you know what? My mom, she said something to me and it really pissed me off and I'm just in a bad mood. And sometimes just stating the reason out loud is enough to like distance yourself from, your own mood and to diffuse the power of the mood over you. And that helps me actually a lot. If I just say it out loud, boy, I don't feel like my girlfriend pissed me off, so I don't want to play. Then sometimes that's just enough to get me to say, okay, you know what, that's irrelevant. I think I can play now. Another thing you can do is, if you're not in the mood, start fantasizing or visualizing the achievement of those goals that were, like, boy, if I can make that extra 2,000 a month, that would really make a big difference. I could save that up. I could finally get that car. I could go on that vacation, or I could get that Nintendo Wii, whatever it is. Sometimes that's enough. If you just start doing that, it sort of distances yourself from your bad mood and whatever is bothering you, and it gets you in a positive frame of mind. And that can help you summon motivation in a lot of cases, and that works for me too. And obviously, I mean, there are things that everyone would try. Try getting your mind off it. Listen to music, go on YouTube, whatever. Look at what's the one I'm looking at recently? Oh, like there's these great videos of like a guy who changes the lyrics to songs to what's actually happening in the music video. Really hilarious. Like you've got to find like just go ahead and Google white wedding literal video, right? And that gets me in a good mood. And I can always I don't know what it is, but it's just hilarious. But that's what you can do. Just try getting your mind off it, through any of these things. And then just kind of ask yourself, all right, I took 5-10 minutes, I watched the show, or whatever. How do I feel any different? Maybe you do. Another thing you can do is just open one game, right? Just open one sit and go at like a lower buy-in, just to see if you can get sucked into like that playing mode. Like, all right, I don't feel like playing, but you know what? I'm going to open. I normally play 20s, but I'm just going to open this $5 sit and go, just to see if I can just kind of get back in the mood. And sometimes that works too. And you'll just say, okay, I'm playing, all right, and then you kind of get lost in the in the flow of the game, and then you can start opening more tables as you start to feel better. And if you simply can't get there, if you do all that stuff and whatever else you can think of to do, then just make the conscious, explicit statement, right? And sometimes saying it out loud helps. Say, I am choosing not to play because even though I've tried to get over it, I'm just not in the right frame of mind, and I don't want to lose money because that would hurt my long-term goals. And then it becomes a decision, right? Then it's not like this emotionally induced lack of playing. It's an actual decision that takes into account, your actual factors, right? And then you're not just a person who's run by his emotions. You're objectively looking at the situation and evaluating it in terms of your long-term goals. And I think that's important, is to not let yourself be run by your emotions in that regard. So I don't know. That's a little bit on sticking to it. I don't know if that's helpful, but anyway, the other thing about a professional is a professional uses the right tools. And there are 3 categories of tools that you'll probably want to eventually have. One is results tracking, the other hand analysis, and like I didn't spell multi-tabling right. I noticed these are just rife with errors because I kind of just banged this out. Sorry. Multi-tabling assistance, right? And really there are tools for any budget. So even if you're playing like the $2 games, what's your bankroll right now, John?
I'm at 205, 180 to 205 it swings through usually,
Okay.
so
Yeah, so
might be just under, but yeah.
Even with that budget, and even if you can't go outside your bankroll to buy any of these programs, that's okay, because there are tools like really for any amount you want to spend. Like if you have no budget at all, you can use SharkScope. That's free, and you can track your results on SharkScope. Sit and Go Endgame Trainer will help you do ICM calculations, and that's free. I have an ICM spreadsheet that can actually help you do ICM calculations kind of by hand, and that's in the thread for my ICM from scratch video. Hold'emResources.net has an online ICM calculator. PokerSove is free. The Pop Universal Replayer is free, and there are a lot of free auto hotkey scripts that can help you with multi-tabling, right? So you don't have to have any money in order to use those things. But if you do have money, I mean, you can use Hold'em Manager or Poker Tracker 3 for tracking. I prefer Hold'em Manager like by a long shot. Sit and Go Wizard for analyzing your hand histories or analyzing your individual hands is great. Sit and Go Power Tools is pretty good, and there are some AHK scripts for helping you multi-table that actually cost money. But those are available if you have money. But whatever options you choose, if you aren't taking advantage of the fact that you can get software tools to help you, your opponents are, right? And that means that you're giving up a theoretical edge to those guys, and you don't want to do that. So whatever you can get from software, whatever you have available to you, get it and use it. Now, I'm pretty sure you have Sit and Go Wizard and probably whatever the other free ones you would have available.
Yes.
We're still working on getting you Hold'em Manager. We'll get that
All right.
somehow. But anyway, yeah, if you're not using tools, know that everyone else is, or not everyone, but a lot of guys are. Maybe not at the $2 level, but there are some guys, and they give you an edge over players who aren't. So the other thing that a professional does is he keeps up, as I mentioned, with the state of the art, right? If like a professor in a certain field keeps up with the literature for his subspecialty, right? Auto mechanic, right? There's new kind of engines and new tools and new whatever, I don't know, whatever it is. But he keeps up with it, right? If your mechanic didn't keep up with like new techniques and new, I don't know, synthetic fluids or whatever that's coming out, you wouldn't really want to go to that guy. Well, maybe you would because he's like an old school mechanic and you have like I don't know, like what I have, like an 89 Toyota short bed truck, and you don't really need to keep up with the state of the art. But, if you had like a relatively recent car and your mechanic didn't know about it, you wouldn't go to him. So keeping up with sort of what's happening in your field is important. And in Sit and Go's, players' tendencies are changing all the time. What they're doing, what the state of the game is. Oh, the game's on full tilt, or really, X lately, right? Keep up with that kind of stuff. And in addition, there are always like new discoveries, like new theoretical kind of angles. There's new variations in different games that might be more profitable, like those Double or Nothings when they first came out. They're like super profitable because no one knew what to do, or very few, especially when it got to those late game situations, and they would just implode spectacularly. There's always new game variations out there. There's new software and gossip. I mean, there's all stuff that you want to, who's Busto? I mean, maybe that doesn't help you, but it might keep you motivated by keeping you like anchored to like a subculture, right? And so, in addition, there are always new players coming in to poker, and they bring their own perspective to the game, right? See, look at the grammar there. I didn't put a I didn't put a preposition, but whatever. They're always coming to the game, right? And it very well might be the case that some new guy who's never played before, or not never played before, but never posted to a forum. He's new to the game, or he just whatever. He posts something, and maybe it's just his one particular way of phrasing a point that you never heard before. Maybe that's just exactly what it takes for you to like the switch to flick on and say, "Oh my God, I get that point now." Right? So keep abreast of the threads and the new thing that's going on, whatever's going on in the forum, right? I think that's important. So you should probably be reading and contributing to at least one Sit and Go forum, right? And be a good poster, right? Don't be a troll, and don't be one of these guys who posts wrong. Like they're like in the sticky of like every single forum ever. It says, post your hand like this with the buy-in, with your hand, and with a meaningful description. But that doesn't stop people from they have a hand that happened that was ace jack on the bubble with bubble blah. No, they don't say that in the thing. They say SNG question mark. Don't be that guy. Type, follow the posting guidelines, good etiquette, spelling and grammar. And of course I say I have good grammar, and I forgot like 5 prepositions in this whole thing, but to the best of your ability, and be an asset to that forum and not a distraction, because the more of an asset you are, the more you're going to get out of it, because the more people are willing to give you, right? If you're just like, you don't follow the posting guidelines and you're always typing lowercase or whatever, people are just going to think, oh, that guy, I don't really want to answer his question. Whereas if, you're, obviously someone who's contributing and respecting the rules of the forum, you're going to be an asset, and they're going to be more willing, especially the better posters, they're going to be more willing to answer your questions. Obviously, I mean, join a poker training site. I mean, if you're watching this, you already have, so you're probably, don't join anymore. This is the good one to do. Or get coaching. Read all the books and articles you can about sit and goes. I mean, people say that sit and goes are a solved game, right? Oh, sit and goes are solved. We know exactly, of course, that isn't true. I mean, I can give you one example or one reason why that's not true. ICM, they say sit and goes are solved because of ICM. Well, then they go on to say, well, there's some things that ICM doesn't capture, and we're not quite sure how to account for that. Well, that means it's not a solved game, right? But anyway, it's claimed that sit and goes are a solved game, but that doesn't mean you don't have something else to learn, right? It might be completely solved, but that doesn't mean that you know it all, right? So that kind of leads us to our wrap-up point, which is staying humble. And I put humble in quotes because I don't really believe in the concept of humility. Like, I think it's kind of a weird concept. Like, it makes me think of somebody who doesn't really think much of themselves and is willing to just kind of be a doormat or whatever. So I don't mean that. But what I mean is that, well, just stay open, right? Don't think that you're ever, like, you know everything. Don't think you're the best, right? You might get to that point. I mean, it happens with people. You might get to the point where you think, like, I know everything about sit and goes, right? But that attitude becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because the minute, all right, say it's even true that you learned everything about sit and goes. Well, again, it's not, everything hasn't been discovered or learned about them yet. So the second that something new comes out, and yet you're kind of here like, oh, I have nothing left to learn, you're not going to be looking for that new thing, and you're not going to know it. So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I would say don't be a know-it-all, be a learn-it-all, right? It sounds kind of like something that, I don't know, the guy from The Office might say, but I think it's like this hokey kind of thing, but I think it's true, right? Don't be the guy that thinks he knows everything. Be a guy who is committed to, like, learning everything he possibly can. That's the attitude you want to take to this kind of thing. And this is, see, again, that word humble kind of bothers me because it makes me think of, like, being unconfident and just kind of like, okay, well, whatever you say or whatever. That's not what I mean. What I mean really, and couldn't think of really another word to describe it. What I mean really is be confident in what you do know, like that's an unshakable foundation, but always be willing. And again, I didn't put that, but always willing. Oh, okay, well, I think that works. But anyway, always be willing to consider a new angle or argument, or on a particular topic. And the other part of this too is don't think that you're too good to move down, right? A lot of bankrolls are busted, and this is kind of under that same kind of humility umbrella. A lot of bankrolls are busted because too many players are unwilling to admit that their level or that their game that they're playing has become, like, pretty hard and harder than it used to be. And so they stay there, and their win rate goes down, and maybe, they get discouraged, and then they start, even losing, being a losing player at that level, and they don't move down, and they end up, going totally bust. And so, and if they would just, have the confidence to admit to themselves that they are being challenged or that their game is off or that they have something else to learn, then that wouldn't happen to them. So you really want to stay, quote, humble. Again, I don't know a word that I really expresses what I want to say, but there is no shame in dropping down as far as you need to go in order to get your game or your bankroll or your confidence back up to where it should be. So, I think that's an aspect of a true professional, and a professional who, if you had if there was some guy in whatever job, and and this happens all the time, right? There are people who are just unwilling to admit that they've been surpassed, in terms of what they know, and that their colleagues might be better than them, but they can still continue to, delude themselves that, they're the best one at the company or whatever. These people are quickly left behind, and they end up, getting axed. So you don't want that to happen to you. So stay humble. So that's really all I have to say. I hope that kind of stuff is useful to you. I don't know. Do you think that there's a value in that? Please say yes.
Yes,
Okay, good.
definitely.
So I really think there is, and
I,
these are things that like really can be the downfall of a lot of players if they don't respect them.
mhm,
So these are things I sort of wanted to kind of get out of the way. So at least if you were experiencing them, I couldn't say I didn't warn you.
right.
Um, and this is stuff that's all going to be important to sort of keep in mind as you progress and as you continue.
Mhm.
So that's really it for the content of this. Now, John, I know I talked a lot and you didn't really talk all that much, and that's going to change. But that's just because I mean, I suppose I could have had you like read the put on screen. I mean, that would be interesting, I guess. But do you have any questions or anything like that, or?
No, I don't think I had any questions right now.
Okay, because it's really pretty straightforward stuff. I mean, and not that it's obvious a lot of it. I mean, some of it's obvious once you state it, but you got to
Mhm.
state it. So
Okay.
next time in this series, we're gonna actually start to look at uh, John's game. We're gonna like pull up some of his hands from that he's given me. We're gonna try to get into his head a little bit, why he's thinking the way he's thinking, and then we're gonna totally demolish his spirit by telling
All
him
right.
he's wrong, and then I'm gonna give him some general guidelines about some changes that he can make to his game, and and then hopefully he'll make them, and then in subsequent episodes we're gonna see how he implements that advice and how he does, and then we can go ahead and refine. So anyway, that's episode 1. I appreciate all of you who, I really anticipated only on going 45 minutes, but I mean, it's like, I always do this. I always go to like 80 minutes, 90 minutes. I just talk a lot. I got problems. So anyway, I appreciate those of you who stuck through this. I think there's a lot of important stuff that, you can apply to your life and to your game. So anyway, I will see you next time.